Oh, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we are back for the TWC Show live on Dash Radio every Saturday, 3 p.m. Pacific Time, 6 p.m. Eastern Time on the Dash Talk X channel. And for the rest of you, now, guys, the Wrestling Classic Patreon is live. So if you are following the Patreon, you get this episode early, like 2 days early. And you also get the video form of the thing. So, guys, follow the Wrestling Classic Patreon. There's a ton of benefits. I am doing it in collaboration with Rain City Toys. So if you are an action figure collector, there is tons of discounts and giveaways for wrestling action figures, AEW figures, WWE figures. So guys, check out the Patreon, as well as you get discounts for the Wrestling Classic merch. You get early access to episodes. You get video content. You get extra content. You get extra podcast stuff. So check out the Patreon, guys. It starts as low as $2. And I'm done plugging that right now because I got to introduce my boy, Nick Diaz, The Lamb Show from Veterans Minimum on TWC Show for the first time in I think a long time. What's going on, bro?
Dude, you don't love me like you used to, man. It's crazy.
What do you mean? What do you mean? I don't say. Realistically, the first episode of the Casual Conversations was with you. You started that shit.
So basically, fans of the TWC Show, what I'm hearing is, what do you guys think? Chime in the comments at me. 5%, 10% commission. What are we thinking, guys?
How about I don't even want to give you more credit. I was about to be like, how about you've been the guy that's been telling me about Patreon since like 2019, and I just finally made one.
Yes, let's go. I'm so happy. I plan on. I was gonna tell you we got to do like a jersey swap, right? Like I'll join your Patreon, you join mine. We do like $5. We join that tier. It's like you know how like after basketball games the guys just change jerseys. It's like even exchange.
No, dude, I'm game. If you want $5 in yours, $5 on mine. Let's do it, man. I'm with it.
Man. Listen, I say this every time I talk to you, whether it's in text or on IG or when I've had you on my show, you've had me on your show. I couldn't be happier for your success. I genuinely mean it. I'm so happy you got your page back.
Thank God.
And also just a stand-up guy. So I appreciate you anytime you have me on, bro.
No, I appreciate it, man. And when you said you wanted to come on, I got hyped because I've been going through a revolving door of co-hosts over the past like months now, ever since Devin law work and his lawyer work got heavier on him. And I wanted you back on the show, man. And I think there's no better time than right now because it's Wrestlemania season. There's stuff to talk about. And I know there's been times you're like, I haven't really been watching. But you watched this week and you told me, you're like, you know what, I want to hop on. And there's been a ton of stuff like Faction-Mania all over the place. Like everything that's happening in wrestling right now is like, other than like some of the Wrestlemania matches, have been about factions, whether it's happening on the Undisputed Era breaking up on NXT, or it's all the factions in AEW, like factions on top of factions on top of factions, or breaking up the Hurt Business on Raw and breaking up Retribution. Like factions is like the big thing that's going on right now, either whether they're coming together or falling apart. And I think the best place to start right now, realistically, I don't know how much you've been watching, but how do you feel about the Hurt Business breaking up?
Dude, so I want to just paint the picture, right? So I moved out of my parents' crib in October.
Yeah.
And all the time, all year round, whenever it's the football season, Monday Night Football takes up all my time because I'm a degenerate. I like to gamble, and also because my show is a sports show. So I don't watch Raw on Monday nights for the most part. What I do is the next morning, since I work the overnight, I'll be watching Raw on those like condensed 30-minute YouTube or Hulu stuff. So, and always around the time of the Rumble, I start getting back into it. I kind of just like feel the pulse, right? And I have an idea of everything that's been going on.
I got two things to say about the first. Like, if you didn't watch Raw this week, bless you, because it sucked. And two, do you feel like you're becoming more of a casual fan?
That's a great question. You know what? I became like a super fan when we were also doing the jerks together, and I was also doing my wrestling stuff as well. Man, not because I don't like the product. I think it's just a combination of life just getting in the way, right? Like there's just a lot of life going on. I got this big decision that's looming, which know about. It's been very private. I haven't mentioned it on social media or on podcasts anywhere. but a select few individuals who I really trust and respect. I've shared them some news. So like, man, I've just been so busy. So I don't think I'm disinterested in the product because I don't like some of the guys and the girls that are there. It's more so just like life is going on.
That's fair, because I can totally understand that. I feel like that kind of, I always say like I kind of fell out of watching WWE so much from like 2007 to 2011 for multiple reasons. Like I watched on Mondays because Mondays were convenient, and I watched Impact because it was on Thursday, but I can never watch SmackDown because of life. Like I was going out for high school, I was with my buddies, I was drinking, I had a girlfriend, like I was busy. Like life was just, wrestling wasn't as much of a priority as it is now. Also because, like you said, when you're doing the Jerks podcast, you were more involved. As I'm the Wrestling Classic, like I almost feel obligated to watch now. But I was also having this conversation with someone, and I really want to bring it up mainly just because I'm like, yo, the amount of wrestling that is available to us now, where it's like there's Japan, there's New Japan Strong, there's Ring of Honor, there's Impact, there's NXT, there's AEW, there's Raw, there's SmackDown, there's NXT UK, there's 205 Live. Like when hardcore wrestling fans come to me now, I'm like, oh, I don't think I'm a hardcore wrestling fan anymore because I don't care to watch all of it. So does that make me a casual fan again?
No, man, I think you're right. I think there's a lot. There's just a lot, right? I remember we would always spotlight this back when I used to do the show with Ernie and Frank, and even with you also, how your normal pay-per-view weekend, right?
Yeah.
Would be like you're talking about 20 to a whole day's worth of wrestling, especially when you would have these big ass pay-per-views, right? So think about Mania week, dude, right? You would have on Friday nights would be either Takeover or the Hall of Fame. Then you'd have a 7-hour Mania. Then you'd have Monday Night Raw. Then you'd have Tuesday Night SmackDown. And I'm talking about a little further back in the past. And then you'd have NXT on Wednesday. Before you know it, you've consumed about 20 hours of wrestling. And now I don't think it's only wrestling. I think everything has become so on-demand heavy that, like, look at me, for example, dude. I'm tapped in as to what's happening, but I'm not watching it live. Also, now it's become a little bit more, it's still chaotic here in New York.
Yeah.
And bars are starting to open up. And like Friday nights, I go out with my buddies. I'm not trying to stay home to watch anything, not just wrestling, bro, just anything. I'm not trying to.
Yeah, that's a good point. It wasn't just wrestling. I just wasn't home on Fridays.
Yeah, so that's why I feel like when it was on Tuesday, it was such a perfect day. Like Tuesday used to be I record my podcast, I do some Twitch streaming, and then I watch that last hour of SmackDown. That was my layout always. And then I'm in bed by around 11 o'clock. But, you can't fault them when they're chasing the bag and they move it to Friday.
No, 100%. And it's on Fox. It's a prime spot. Their numbers are doing better. And personally, since I have been home on Fridays and I have been watching it because I feel like I'm supposed to, when people come to me and they're like, oh, I haven't really been watching WWE, I kind of fell out of it, or I just haven't watched the last few months. I'm like, if I wasn't going to tell you to watch any of the shows, I'd say try to catch SmackDown. It's been the better show, to be honest, in my opinion. Like, I watched Raw this week, bro, and like it sucked. I wish I could get those 3 hours back. I was hosting a Clubhouse room. I've been trying to host live rooms while the show's are on. So at least it was a little bit tolerable because I was talking to people while I was on. But it was just like, by the end of that show, like my only question was why? Like, why did anything on this show happen tonight? Like, nothing was good. And you started it off with the Hurt Business breaking up for what reason?
Yeah, they've been the best thing on Raw for a very long time. Yet another faction, yet another powerful black-led faction, right? Like, remember the New Day came around and they got super over and popular, and people love the Hurt Business. Like, just a bunch of OGs, right? And you had like Cedric in there too. So you had a little bit of, I know Cedric's been around, but Lashley, Shelton, MVP, those are basically the PG era guys, right? You're talking about 10, 15 years ago. So that was dope, right? And then they break it up, and I don't get it doing it now. Maybe that could have been something where you do it on the Monday after Mania.
Or something.
Yeah.
We're just weeks off. Like, we literally are just weeks off of them holding all the titles. Cedric and Shelton were the tag champions. First last year was the US champion. Then now he had the WWE championship. They had all the belts. They had the swagger. They were rocking the suits. For years, people were yearning for that, like, strong black faction, like that one that was kind of resembled like the Nation of Domination. They wanted that serious black faction for years. Anytime they put any of the black wrestlers together, people assumed it was gonna, like the New Day, people thought it was gonna be a serious faction at first. But instead, they got the fun-loving faction that got super over, but they still never got that serious faction that people could take seriously. Not that you can't take the New Day seriously. You should take them seriously. But they were fun. They were entertainers. They were jokes. They were comedy. We finally got that. They let it run hot for a minute. They let them win all the belts. And before they could even dominate even more, they're like, nah, we're going to take the belts off of Cedric and Shelton, which to me was so, like, I get that they didn't know what they're doing with AJ, so now we're going to have AJ and Omos versus the New Day, but that easily could have been a triple threat tag match with the Hurt Business defending against those two teams, and all these guys could have walked into WrestleMania with the momentum that they had, rather than, 2 weeks before WrestleMania, let's break them up fully. As it seems as of right now, it seems like they're broken up fully. We don't know. Maybe this could be a swerve and they get back together next week or something. But by what we saw at the end of the show with Baron, fucking boring Corbin and Lashley, like, what? Why?
Yeah, man, it doesn't make sense. And I feel like they've done this in the past where they've done one of two things. They've either broken up teams in a misopportune time, or they'll give us a pay-per-view worthy match on like a Raw, and then have that same match on a pay-per-view. And then it's like, the most famous one going back a couple of years, I think it was like a Rusev Roman Reigns match on like a Monday Night Raw. And it was like a 25-minute match. And it was dope as hell. But I think that same weekend was either SummerSlam or it was like some major pay-per-view. And it's like, then why did you? I think that one.
I mean, that's what they kind of been doing with Apollo and Big E. Or like another one to call back to from a couple of years ago is, remember how many times we got the Bar versus Dean and Seth?
Yeah. Yeah, that I feel like that's when you start to lose your consumer, because then you could just tell that they're being lazy. And by them, I mean like the creative side of it. And again, I hate being one of those fans that talks about creative, because I wouldn't know.
But didn't we get like, I'm thinking about most recent in history. Like, didn't we, like, I remember complaining just a couple of weeks ago on this show, like, we got Drew and Sheamus 2 weeks in a row on Raw just for them to face each other again at Fastlane, to the point where they faced each other in Fastlane in a really good match. I'm like, I felt like I've already kind of seen this 2 times already.
Yeah.
Like, how is that creative booking to get to the match? We literally just saw Sheamus versus Matt Riddle on Raw, where Sheamus beat Matt Riddle, and I'm pretty sure they already booked Sheamus and Matt Riddle for WrestleMania now. You already gave it to us. Why do we care? And now when it goes back to factions for a second, breaking up factions way too early. Like, on the flip side, on NXT, they're breaking up Undisputed Era. But at a point where Undisputed Era has been running hot since 2017, they run all the titles, they went through War Games. Like, it makes sense that they break up now.
Yes, they do. I agree with you. If that's the point that you're making, I agree with you, because you just said it, bro. They've been together since 2017. So that sort of ran its course. Her business was what, 5 months, 6 months?
And you took them out when they were on top. You took them out while they were on top. Not when they were like, they've done everything, they've achieved all. What else is left for them to do? Like, no, you took them out while they were on top. Like, even Evolution, a lot of people compared the Hurt Business to Evolution. Evolution, yes, 02 they started and they had a couple of issues because both Randy and Batista got hurt. But then 03 they just dominated when those guys both came back one by one. And then 04 they were like all the belts by the beginning of 04, and they were running that game. And then, okay, sure, in the summer of 04, you lost Orton. But no, you still had Batista, Triple H, and Flair running that game. And then by WrestleMania of 05, they finally got Batista out of there. But like, it ran its course from 02 to 05. This was literally a team, if I might be wrong, but I think the Hurt Business only like began in 2020.
Yeah. No, you're right there. But I'm saying, like, they weren't even around for that long.
And then they kind of teased it like maybe new people might be joining. Like, Drew was trying to get people to fight him, and it's like, oh, Ricochet might join this new version of the Hurt Business. Or maybe, Ali's here, and like they just broke up Retribution, which that team breaking up doesn't bother me as much because they dropped the ball with the execution of that since day one. But okay, maybe it's Ali. Like, maybe it's gonna be some new group or something. Like, I mean, the original Nation of Domination went from Farouk, Crush, and Savio Vega to like this predominantly strong black group. But like, I don't know. And then Baron Corbin, and no disrespect to Baron Corbin, the human, But Baron Corbin to me has always been change the channel. I don't really care what he's doing television.
He's never done it for me at all. And hey, look, I know Mustafa Ali is your guy, so I'm going to be very polite here. I was not upset with the reveal of him being the leader. I was upset with who else was involved.
Yeah. I was upset about the execution. I will stand on this. I think there was two things they could have done with Retribution that could have made this all work so much better. One, Mustafa Ali should have been the person that fought Drew McIntyre at Royal Rumble, not Goldberg. Because even if it was a one-off and he lost in a really good match, you made Retribution feel just a little bit important because he got a match against the world champion at the Royal Rumble, and they could have had like a banger. Two, Mustafa Ali should have stolen Kofi's spot in the Elimination Chamber to be a callback to when Kofi took his spot and Kofi-Mania popped off. Like, that should have been an angle. But Kofi got in there last minute. I remember saying Kofi should be in there, and everyone's like, oh, no, but he's hurt. And then eventually Kofi actually got in the chamber. Perfect opportunity to have Mustafa screw Kofi out of the chamber by attacking him early in the night with Retribution, taking his spot, having another great showing that we could have had a Kofi and Ali match at WrestleMania that actually meant something. But they dropped the ball on that too. And then Kofi just went in the chamber and ended up losing. And like, that was that. Like, it was the execution that I think really ruined the whole Retribution thing. It wasn't Retribution itself. It was whoever was making the decisions for that faction poorly executed it. Because they started off hot. Like, they had us talking. There was like 50 people breaking a ring and attacking people. And they connected the dots and saying that Ali was the SmackDown hacker. And now he's with Retribution. Like, they made it all make sense. And then they just dropped the ball.
No, you're right. And I do feel like it's very NXT call-up-ish, right? Like, how many times have we seen guys and girls come up from NXT and they sort of just drop the ball with what they're doing? And you know what? Like I wanted to ask you about this one, man, because there's one thing that I know I'm kind of going to jump the gun here and
go right ahead.
all over the place. I like to say when I like to do my shows, it's controlled chaos. So I'm going to make everything make sense. I promise.
I like when people do this too, because sometimes I forget topics and other people bring it up and I'm like, oh yeah.
Well, you know, you asked me, I want to talk a little bit about like on the Andrades of the world that get released. And then immediately everyone's like, oh, they're going to be at AEW.
But go on.
Why does AEW want to become WCW in the sense where they were just signing all these cast-offs from WWE? But at the time, the big difference is that AEW is signing guys that are released from WWE, but they're still young. Like, they're signing young talent, like the Brazilian chick,
Take Conti, Miro, the list goes on.
Like, they're still like, they're not signing, like, even Christian is like young, right? He just hasn't been around, but they're not signing Kurt Angle now. They're not signing like Ric Flair.
Yeah. I think like a better example would be like if Randy Orton for some reason got released and they signed Randy Orton or a Batista or they signed a Kurt Angle. Like, okay. So my take is this. I'm a believer that they should definitely sign talent that leaves WWE because you do bring that name recognition that they might not have. Like, if there are people because my biggest complaint with AEW on a regular basis so much of the time, and I feel like they're doing it a little bit better at it now, is I'm like, yo, they do nothing. They do nothing to try to gain new fans. Yet they rest on their laurels to cater to the hardcore fans they already have that watch BTE, that know Kenny Omega and the Bucks. Like, they cater to those guys so much, and they don't really do anything to gain new fans other than sign talent that people know. That might bring new fans in. But now they're doing even more stuff, like doing the reality show, like Roads to the Top with Cody Rhodes and Brandy. Like, they're trying to do things to get casual fans, but for the longest time, like, they don't do things to bring in new fans. And even when they bring in talent, they don't even use them to the extent that they should probably be used. Like, Miro, like, came in here with a bang and then started playing video games. Like, the only person I want to say actually got used to their full extent that they signed from WWE was like Moxley. Like, that's the only guy that I would say, other than Jericho, who I consider an AEW guy because he was there since day one. Like, Moxley's like the only other guy I think really came from the WWE and did good. But AEW themselves, like, and I think it's good to sign talent that is known from WWE like that. I think that's what made the Monday Night Wars a thing, was because it worked for them. Like, if Bischoff did not go sign Hogan, Savage, Piper, and all these guys that Vince thought was old or didn't work for them, then there would not have been a Monday Night Wars. That wasn't working prior to that. But AEW has also come to a point now where they have enough talent. Because now if they're just signing people to have them there, it's not going to help. Like, you have enough talent, and it sucks. Personally, when Andrade got released, I'm like, yo, the last place I want to see Andrade go is AEW. Mm-hmm. I would rather see him in Japan. I'd rather see him at Ring of Honor with his boys, like Roosh guys. He can come to AEW eventually, but let him go do other stuff, because he can come there, and where are they going to put him? Because they keep signing people, and half these people aren't. Dude, they got Brian Cage, they got Ricky Starks, they got Lance Archer, they got Sting. Sting is an example of someone they signed that was older to like maybe do it that way. But they got Christian, they got Ethan Page, they got all these guys that are in this mid card that aren't even being used properly. And then they still have all the top card guys, and they still have the elite guys. Like, there's too many good people in this roster already for you to just keep signing people to have them.
Yeah, and to push back a little bit on Dean Ambrose coming over, Jon Moxley, at least he was a big fish in WWE, where all the other guys kind of left because they were jobbers, right? Like, they were mid-carders, jobbers.
Or they got released in that release spree in the pandemic, you know?
Yeah, or they got released because you haven't seen them in 3 months on TV. Where Moxley was still in the main event picture. You was still, you had that little send-off with the Shield too, and then the whole Last Dance thing. So I do think that it's a little different with like him, right? And Andrade hasn't been seen in months also. And then, like you mentioned, Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks. Dude, it's going to age poorly, I think, Kenny Omega not coming to WWE.
You think so?
Man, like,
I think if AEW prospers the way they hope to prosper and just remains the way that it is and continues to grow, like, I always felt like I want to see everyone have a WrestleMania. Like, it made me so happy, even though the finish pissed me off that Sting had a WrestleMania moment. So I get that, but then I don't know.
Well, I'm not even talking about Mania. I just feel like, so let's use like the NFL as an example, right? So I can bring a little bit of my expertise into this one. Dude, you could be a great college quarterback, and then you go to the NFL and you just fizzle out. Or you might be a great arena football guy or a great XFL Canadian football. But the big leagues is the NFL. The big leagues is WWE. So I feel like Kenny Omega, dude, at the time, people were like, yo, unanimous best wrestler in the world.
Yeah.
And to me, it was just like, yo, for me, everything that isn't WWE, I treat like the indies.
Okay.
And I know that's terrible because AEW is on network television and they're a big brand and they do big arenas prior to the pandemic. I get that. But to me, my thing, like, I never got into Ring of Honor, which if you look at the Mania card, it's basically a bunch of Ring of Honor matches. It's like Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, Cesaro, Rollins. It's all
Logan Paul.
Yeah,
Logan Paul's there.
Yeah. So, and then like Mr. ROH is like going for the belt again, and Daniel Bryan. So I get that, but for me, man, like, he had that run from the Okada match at the Tokyo Dome with the Wrestle Kingdom, and then, man, I don't know. I feel like eventually, maybe now you don't see it that way, but when it's all said and done, I think there might be some regret on his side and fans that were backing him not going.
I think it might go back to being the Sting thing. Like, if AEW ever closes its doors, it's like, well, it's going to be the Sting thing. Like, we want to, maybe he just needs to come here. That's all what it's going to end up being. I don't think it's going to be, because he's still relevantly young. Relatively, no, I can't even speak English now. Still young. So he's young enough to still kill sometimes someone and come later, because we've seen guys now return at the age of 50, 55, Sting 61. So it's a never say never thing, but there's some guys that just don't feel, till this very day, and he's been there for like 5-6 years now, AJ Styles just never feels like a WWE guy to me, even though he's there.
Ooh,
and he's one of those guys that we always want to see there, and he didn't get to till he was like 40. But like, never, like, he's been there. He's still, look at the way he's booked for this WrestleMania. He still just doesn't feel like a WWE guy. I will never sit there and like remember AJ Styles as like, but he's a WWE. No, he's AJ Styles. He was the guy from All Around. He was the Impact guy, TNA guy. He was the Japan guy. Like, he's AJ Styles. I feel like Omega's gonna have that feeling too if he ever goes there. He's just never. But to your point, I have said this a bazillion times. WWE is Disney. They're the main show. They're Disney. I don't know if I look at them as like everybody else's the minor leagues, but WWE is Disney. Like when you talk to a non-wrestling fan, they know WWE. Like that's what they say. It's like you can talk about fast food. For most people, the first thing that might pop up is McDonald's. Like that's the brand. You know, they're the Kleenex of tissues. They're the rollerblades of roller skates. Like WWE's the brand. But these other ones could be just as good. And I still look at Ring of Honor as an independent company. I'll say that first things first. But like New Japan's the Disney of Japan. Like, you know what I mean? That's like their Bollywood to America's Hollywood, you know? Like that's the way I see it. And then AEW's not. AEW's probably like the CFL, you know? Like it's never going to be as universally looked at as the NFL, but some people like it for some reason, or maybe it's college football or something. Like it's right there. It's just as popular, but it's never going to be the NFL. So to your point, will Kenny Omega ever wrestle or play in the NFL? Is that a missed opportunity? Probably. But he might be known as the greatest college football player ever. That also worked in a different league somewhere else.
Man, I don't know if I agree with you on AJ Styles not being remembered for being WWE because he
will be, but he's not like as someone that's watched him since 2002. I don't look at AJ Styles and say he's a WWE guy, which is weird because I now look at Daniel Bryan. I don't look at him as Mr. Ring of Honor for some reason, but I think he's a WWE guy. There's just something about AJ where I'm like, AJ could leave tomorrow and show up in AEW, and I would think it's totally normal.
Interesting.
I wouldn't think it's a WWE guy showing up in AEW. I just think it's AJ Styles showing up in AEW.
Yeah, because he had, I think some of the best Cena matches ever were with AJ Styles, and then he had that feud with Roman. I even like the wrestling, dude. I went to a house show.
Yeah, I was going to give you a comparison in a second, though. But go on.
I went to a house show and I saw him and Randy Orton have like a 30-minute match, and it was sick. Like. It was dope as.
But Randy Orton's a WWE guy, and every time they had these Randy Orton AJ matches or Cena AJ matches, didn't you always feel like it was a WWE guy against the outsider?
That's a very good point. Yeah,
and then also, and another comparison, the Monday Night Wars could not have happened without Hogan going to WCW and the NWO and stuff. But whenever Hogan was wearing that red and yellow, did he ever feel like a WCW guy? The entire time he was in WCW, did you look at Hogan and be like, that's a WC? He was there for like 6-7 years, but the moment he came back to the WWE and they had Rock and Hogan, he was the WWE's guy. That's who he was. He spent 7 years in a whole different company, but he was still a WWE guy. That's just who he is. And that's why I feel about AJ. He can spend 10 years in WWF, but the moment he leaves, I'm not gonna be like, oh, he's a WWF guy. I'm like, oh, he's that TNA worldly independent wrestling guy. Like,
nah,
he really made his name.
I hear you. Hey, I want to ask you. I want to ask you another question. We mentioned something in passing before about like how you don't like Raw much, right? Like
I do. There's just some. You have a fucking 3-hour show. How do you suck so bad?
Yeah. So you prefer SmackDown, right?
Well, 100%. And biasly though, Sasha's on SmackDown. You guys know how I feel about the boss, the blueprint, the standard, the GOAT, the draw, the Hall of Famer. The boss, Sasha Banks. This whole heel Roman thing is something we've all wanted since 2016, and it's working.
Yeah.
Sammy's there. Owen's there. Liv Morgan's there. Carmella's there. Daniel Bryan's there. Edge is now there. It's on Fox. They try a little bit harder. Corey Graves and Michael Cole is your commentary team, and they have distinctive voices. They have personalities that you understand. Sometimes the Raw commentary, other than when Samoa Joe's on there, Tom Phillips and Byron Saxton sound like the exact same person. The overall presentation of Raw is just, they have a lot of the talent that's cool too. Like, I will always and forever be a Randy Orton fan. I'm a big fan of what The Fiend does. I like Drew McIntyre. I like Bobby Lashley. But I'm just more drawn to SmackDown. And then it's 2 hours. You know?
Well, I think WWE also, because of the Fox deal, has like look at the names that you mentioned, dude.
Seth Rollins is on SmackDown.
Yeah.
Cesaro, Shinsuke.
Yeah, if you just look at if you were to do a draft and draft all the wrestlers, I think if like the first 20 picks hypothetically speaking, the majority of them would be SmackDown people. So I think they're just doing that because they prefer SmackDown to be the flagship show, even though Raw on Monday night has been the staple for about as long as I can remember. Like I just turned 30.
Even anytime SmackDown even started beating them in the ratings, Vince would somehow swerve it back into Raw's favor. That was his baby.
Yeah. Yeah, man. So I just think that like you're right on the Roman stuff. Roman Reigns is, I think eventually it's going to lead to something with The Rock.
And they're smart, dude. They're smart because my biggest, I don't know if you've listened to the show or even just heard me rant on Instagram or anything. My biggest thing with Roman and Edge, like I knew that was the match they were going to go to the moment that Edge announced that he was going to be in the Rumble. Because prior to the Edge, the Monday before the Rumble saying he's going to be in it, I actually was like, it was a pretty unpredictable Royal Rumble. Then Edge cut a promo being like, I'm coming back. I'm in the Rumble. I'm like, oh, Edge is winning the Rumble. And Edge won the Rumble. And I'm like, automatically, I'm like, they're not going to do Edge and Drew. The stuff Edge did on NXT got me intrigued because it actually felt like fresh. But I'm like, it's going to be Edge and Roman. And my biggest thing was like, I don't want to see Edge beat Roman, especially right now with the momentum that Roman has. Yes, Roman can look weak and look like the cowardly heel, but he cannot lose. That he can tap, he can look like Drew's kicking his ass, but he cannot lose. He's the insecure, overachieving bully. That's who Roman Reigns is. And now he's aware that he's a little insecure, so he's a bad guy, and he has Heyman in his corner. So you never see him wrestle. He barely wrestles on SmackDown. He's the Brock Lesnar schedule of wrestling when he wants to now, but he can't lose. And Edge beating Roman, like I understand, like the fairy tale ending. He returned after being retired. Now he wins, but it pissed me off because I'm an Edge fan, but I don't want to see Edge beat Roman. I want Roman to look strong until we get to Roman versus The Rock. Yeah. And if Edge beats him now, I know some fans will be like, well, no, we'll be fine. Now Roman has a reason to get mad and he can win the title back. Like, no, it's more fun when the babyface is chasing the title, not the bad guy. Like, so what I would want, so them inserting Daniel Bryan was almost like the smartest thing for them to do. Because initially, even back, say, January, December, I'm like, a Daniel Bryan Roman Reigns feud would be great. Because there's so much to call back on. Like, they were trying to push you and I was over. Like, I had to retire and you still couldn't get over. Like, there's so much shit Daniel Bryan can talk, but I was like, damn, we're going with Edge and Roman. And for the weeks after, like, Edge didn't really do anything. I started falling out of the feud. And now Bryan's in, and I'm like, they made sense of, they fixed the situation. Edge is going to beat Bryan, and Roman's never going to actually lose. Yeah. And Roman's going to eventually get that belt back, and we're going to head into, hopefully, I know everyone's saying Rock, Roman, LA 2 years from now because it's Hollywood, but Dallas fits 100,000 fans. And hopefully by that point, this pandemic's fully over, and we can have 100,000 fan plus in an arena, and Roman versus The Rock is a draw.
Well, Texas is kind of going guns blazing, letting people run wild anyway. So I don't even think you need to worry about that 2 years from now. Dude, a lot could happen.
Well, that's next year. 2 years from now is Hollywood, and everyone's saying it's going to happen 2 years from now. But I'm saying this should happen next year in Texas.
Yes, that's what I'm going at. Where 2 years from now, a lot could happen, man. A lot could happen.
And I might even get sick of the Roman thing by 2 years from now. So let's get
yeah. You do something where you have like a match at Survivor Series or something like that where Roman's just cleaned out everybody and The Rock comes back for promotion of some kind, and then he's like, yo man, who the real tribal chief is me. Like, don't forget who daddy is, kind of thing. And then before you know it, it's like,
to your point about Roman, the other thing is I think this was really smart in the sense of they needed a way to get the belt off of Roman if they wanted to prolong it. And they can run with Edge having the belt until Roman gets back later this year to get back to it. Because if he was a champion the entire time too, I think a lot of people get annoyed at that.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, man. And shouts to you. I feel like WWE might be creeping on your page because you were clamoring for a triple threat like 3 weeks before it got announced.
I just felt like I started getting into this feeling when they're building up towards Fastlane 2 with Daniel Bryan and stuff. I'm like, why am I still the match is already made now? It's Edge versus Roman Reigns, but I'm still more intrigued of a Roman Reigns versus Daniel Bryan match than I am for an Edge and Roman Reigns match. It just wasn't intriguing to me. But now, look how much character it's added. You added Bryan, Edge is acting heelish. Like, there's more depth to it now. And now to throw back to a conversation we were having like 10 minutes ago, though, at least now, like, it shows you that how they consider SmackDown, because basically the main event for night 2 seems to be the triple threat. And what a lot of people are saying is the main event for night 1 is Bianca versus Sasha.
It should be.
And it should be, rightfully so. And I want to talk about that really quickly, and I do really want to talk about Dynamite because I really enjoyed it tonight. But the thing about, and I want to know why you don't watch it. We'll get there. But the thing about Bianca and Sasha that I really love is that the build-up sucked. We all wanted it since like December when we were making predictions who should win the Rumble. A lot of people were saying Bianca and Sasha's the match, Bianca and Sasha's the match. We finally get the match, and instead of it being like a rivalry, they've been like buddy, like teaming up against Nia and Shayna, like Reginald's involved. At first, like Carmella was still involved. Like it was a really weird build-up. And we're like, when are they gonna finally have tension between the two of them? And like even when I thought like Elimination Chamber would be the time they fought Nia and Fastlane, we would have like, you know, them having tension with each other. But no, another match against Nia and Shayna. And the build-up kind of felt lukewarm. And I've been one of those people complaining about, I'm like, it doesn't feel like this could main event night 1 because it doesn't even seem like they have any tension. Like I'm not getting Rock Austin WrestleMania 17 vibes from these two. I'm getting like this weird friendship between these two that's not really like, and I get that Sasha's technically like a tweener because she technically had to turn babyface to feud Bayley. And obviously against Carmella, she was technically a babyface, but she stayed arrogant. She stayed cocky. She still kind of kept some of her heelish rule like attributes. And I love that. I love it when someone turns baby, but they can still keep some of their heelish attributes. But I was like, like something needs to happen. Like someone needs to like either turn on someone or someone needs to get mad at someone for this to feel more intense. And then I figured it out. Tell me how you feel about this. Bianca doesn't win at WrestleMania. Sasha fully turns heel at WrestleMania. Maybe she cheats to win because to get people to really dislike Sasha again, why not have her beat the person that everybody wants to win at WrestleMania? Because like we're already gonna have the happy moment with Edge, supposedly. We could end that first night with Sasha beating Bianca, officially going full heel, because she's already showing it even these last couple of weeks where they are kind of building tension with them. She's scared that Bianca's coming for a spot. She's saying she's better than Bianca. But then to actually get insecure, like Stone Cold WrestleMania 17 got insecure, like he needed that belt to prove that he was the man. Sasha gets insecure, cheats, retains that title, goes full heel, and by SummerSlam or at SummerSlam itself, Bianca will end up winning that women's championship. But now you're set for the next months going forward because now the build up to this match has been so whatever that something needs to happen at the match where everything that happens after makes this feud even more better for the long run because the show goes on after WrestleMania, of course, right?
Nah, man, I hear what you're saying. You know, the one thing is, it did seem like they had so much momentum with Bianca winning the Rumble because they had just dropped that 24, I believe it was.
Yeah.
Or the 365.
One of those specials. Yeah.
Yeah, it was one of those, which are fantastic, by the way.
Yeah.
I think it's the best thing that the network offers, personally. And then after that, it kind of just was very dull. And, you know, it was a couple of years ago. It was the Rollins, Kofi Mania, Becky Lynch Mania, where everyone felt as, all right, well, they're not going to give us all three good moments, right? Like everybody wanted those three were the three people that everybody wanted to see win. And then guess what? They gave us all three, right? So can they do that again with Bianca and Edge?
But like looking back, the other two kind of sucked. Like Rollins winning was like Becky winning, everyone was tired. Like I always say for anyone listening, I probably should plug it anyways. I wrote an article for 1:37 p.m. I ranked all the WrestleManias from my least favorite to my most favorite. And my biggest thing that I said about WrestleMania 35 being the live and stuff too was like, don't get me wrong, good stuff happened after Kofi won the belt. But Kofi winning the belt was the peak of the show. I know this is a WrestleMania with 2 nights, so there can be multiple peaks, but some of the best WrestleManias were the ones that did give us what we wanted, but they kind of took us on a ride. And look at WrestleMania 34. Like they swerved the hell. Like that was a horrible WrestleMania because they didn't give us anything. Brock won, Shinsuke didn't win, Asuka didn't win. Like Braun won the belt of the kid. Like it was bad. But when they mix it up, man, like what was my third greatest WrestleMania? WrestleMania 30. Why? Yes, we had the Daniel Bryan moment, but Taker lost the streak, and we're gonna remember that forever. Sometimes you got to give us, and you want to take us on an emotional roller coaster ride. If we're on a high the entire time, at some point that high is going to peak and we're just continuing on this wavelength of a high. in my opinion. And you got to remember, we also got Drew and Bobby on the same night as Bianca and Sasha. I mean, they can give us Drew the moment or they can give Bianca the moment. But if they give us both of them, that's just a high. I want a low. I need something to piss me off.
Yeah. Nah, man, I hear what you're saying. How do you feel about the 2-night Mania? Do you prefer
I'm
it?
not with it. No. I
Oh,
just
you
think
don't?
I just first things first, don't book so many matches because that was the other problem with WrestleMania 35. It was just long.
Yeah. Oh,
If
dude,
it
I was
didn't
there
be
for that
long,
too.
then sure, 2 nights. But if you like, but then I looked back at the WrestleMania 35 card. There was like a Joe Rey Mysterio match, a Finn Balor, Bobby Lashley. I'm like, I don't remember any of this shit happening, and I was there live.
Yeah.
Just it's unnecessary. What makes takeovers so special? Now takeovers is 2 nights this year too. Don't get me wrong, but what always usually made takeovers so special? It was
They
just
make everything mean something.
and it was just the matches that needed to be on the show. And there was a lot of great talent and storylines that were going on, but if it wasn't worthy enough to be on this 5-card show for this one takeover, it was okay. They weren't on the show. The feuds and the rivalries continued on NXT, but just the 5 matches that needed to happen on the takeover happened. A lot of the WrestleManias that I really enjoyed recently, when I was making that list, I looked at like WrestleMania 30. It was like a 7-match card.
Yeah. They gotta make it mean more, right? But I think they've made WrestleMania be so big that like if you're a wrestler and you're not on Mania, like, oh my god, am I gonna get released?
Yeah.
So
and there's people complaining right now. It's 2 nights, and Carmelo's complaining this morning on the bump that like, why isn't there another women's match? Like, why is it just those 2? Like, shouldn't there be like more women's matches featured if it's 2 nights?
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean the only other woman that's featured is Alexa Bliss with the Fiend, right?
I mean, we might still get a tag title match because they love using Nia and Shayna, but other than that, like, there's a lot of women that aren't going to be on this show. There's no battle royals this year.
It's weird, man. It's weird. Look, I prefer 2 nights over a 7-hour event.
Oh no, for sure. If it's going to be long, I'd rather it be 2 nights.
Yeah, but I don't get why they can't do something like 6 to 11, right? You do like 6 o'clock to 11 o'clock, maybe 11:30 if it goes over. Like 5 hours is more reasonable for like your grand event. Like even the Super Bowl, dude, is like a 4-hour, 4.5-hour event. So I don't know. Like,
I mean,
Shane McMahon and Braun is the most
nobody cares.
Whatever thing. Like,
there's so many matches that could necessarily not really be on this show. Like the whole AJ Omos thing. If you didn't have anything good for AJ to do, then just leave him off the card. That was so pointless.
You know what I'm fascinated by? I'm fascinated by Bad Bunny.
I hear, he laid a deep punch on Miz this week, and I was like, Miz probably told him to lay it in or like make it look as real as possible, which is great. I'm oddly concerned, well, not oddly concerned, oddly like fascinated that it's not a tag match with Miz and Morrison versus Priest and Bunny, where they could protect Bunny and not make him do so much, and have him have like a hot tag and win the match or something. But no, he's going one-on-one with the Miz and does nothing but Damian Priest, and John Morrison's whole return has been being Miz's buddy. But like, I'm with it. Anyone that's hating on it is ridiculous because WrestleMania has always been known for having this celebrity involvement, and also like he's a huge ass fucking star. If you don't like him or you don't know him, cool, but trust people when they say he's a huge ass fucking star.
Oh yeah, he's a global megastar without a doubt.
I don't fucking.
The coolest thing, unlike other celebrities that have pulled up, he's actually a fan, bro.
And that's the thing that makes me happy about it too, is that he actually like he's living his dream. It's different than like someone being there for the sake of being there. Like he actually was a wrestling fan, is a wrestling fan, is probably training hard to make this be as good as possible. And then on the flip side, you have a Logan Paul. I don't know if Logan Paul is a wrestling fan. I don't know what his involvement's going to be with this Owens and Zayn match. I kind of wish he's just there for SmackDown next week and not on WrestleMania, but I find that highly unlikely because Zayn versus Owens at WrestleMania is just like, if you know their history and how far back they go from wrestling in Quebec and the stuff in the independents, like it's actually so cool that they're having a singles match at WrestleMania. I thought it was going to happen at WrestleMania 32, but then they got thrown in the ladder match. Then we thought it was going to happen at WrestleMania 34, but Bryan came out of retirement. We got the tag match. We never had Zayn versus Owens at a WrestleMania, so it's super cool for them. But then to throw Logan Paul in there, you're like, you took something that's so perfect, and you're going to throw him in there. But then on the business side of things, I'm not a Logan Paul fan. Not that like I hate him or anything like that. I just don't know enough about him. I was too old when his content started popping. Like I know him enough to know that he is famous as fuck for what he does. And it makes sense from a business standpoint to have Logan Paul there. Would I rather have him been involved in a different match, in a different feud? Sure. But whatever. It makes sense with the whole Sami Zayn documentary series that he has going on, blog, or whatever he wants to call it.
You know, it sucks that both we're getting back-to-back manias that are going to be limited from a fan perspective. Like even at Raymond James, they're not really putting 70,000 people in there.
No.
So it still doesn't feel like.
But I have been like, the one thing that's going to be so good about having these fans even there, the amount that there is that WWE, this is like Vince's wet dream. He's been able to control the reactions for everything. So even if fans are disliking something or liking something, we don't really know the truth unless you're on the internet, because we haven't heard a live fan reaction in over a year. So like he might think that someone is super over and they might come out to just a choir of boos. You know what I mean? Like, and we're going to find out at WrestleMania. He might think that Braun Strowman's going to come out and it's going to be to like a ton of cheers when everyone that's actually in attendance might be booing this man. And he's going to be like, oh, because he can't control it no more. He hasn't had to listen to the fans for over a year.
That's a great point.
And I'm excited that the fans actually have a voice again, and him having to like, oh, they're cheering Shane over Braun? What? Oh, they're cheering Orton over the Fiend, because obviously the Fiend's been a babyface this whole time, if you didn't know.
Yeah. Nah, the Fiend, the Fiend's another thing, man. Like Bray Wyatt, I think he's gonna go down as forever being like just dropping the ball on him, no matter what it is. It's just,
I mean, this has been good. This Fiend part has been good.
It has been, but also, you know,
him losing to Goldberg will always be a dark spot, but it's been good.
Dude, I'm more excited about this takeover, the 2-day takeover, than I am of the 2-day Mania.
NXT is not here for me.
Really?
For longer than it just. I watched it tonight too. It was good. It was decent. There's too much wrestling. Like the match of the Karrion Kross and Finn Balor. That sounds cool to me. There's another match. Adam Cole and Kyle O'Reilly will be a banger.
Yeah, well,
not the only thing that, like, those are the only two matches I can tell you I care about. What else is on the Io and Raquel? I don't care.
Well, I'm always just fascinated by Walter, just like how big he is and his whole setup, and you know he's had the title for so long. I feel like Ciampa and him are gonna have a dope ass match.
It'll be a good match, but you already know that Walter's facing this Rampage guy right after for the UK title, so is Ciampa gonna win?
That's true.
NXT is there's something about it for the last year. I don't know, and it really doesn't have anything to do with AEW. It's just there's something about, since it went 2 hours and it went on the USA Network, that it just has not hit the same ever since. And they've poached talent from it real quickly, like guys that were getting over, like Keith Lee and Dijakovic and Riddle, like just got stripped from NXT so fast to do nothing on the main roster. And NXT's relying on and then listen, I love Ciampa, I like Gargano, I like Adam Cole. Like, have all these guys felt like they've been there since like 2016?
Well, Gargano's been there since like the early stages. Like Kevin Owens was there when he was there.
And then they tried pushing guys like Dexter Lumis and Cameron Grimes and this LA, but I'm not invested in any of them. Like I can't get into them. And then now, and I'm not hating on this, I think it's cool because they do a way better job than the main roster. But if you watch NXT tonight, like, it's half a men's show and half a women's show. It's like so equally divided of giving both men and women the equal amount of time that, like, there's a lot of the women's stuff that I just don't care about either.
Yeah, I mean, I think I also might be a little biased because if I was to power rank my favorite wrestlers right now, it would probably be Balor and Adam Cole, just across the board, and they're both at NXT. And Gargano always just shows up in a big spot like that, so you know what's going to happen with him. But It's funny, man, with NXT, it seems like some guys are just gonna be there forever. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Because you look at a guy like Finn, this sort of rejuvenated his career. Him going back down there, having some meaningful feuds, some meaningful matchups, being able to have the title.
They tried to make it feel like it was a third brand, and they've made it go back to feeling like it's a development brand, and now Finn's just there. I think at the beginning he brought something to the table, but now it's like, where does he go after he loses this belt?
Well, you know what would have been sick, and this is what I wanted really bad. I remember watching the Royal Rumble with Ernie. Shouts to my guy Ernie.
Yeah.
And when Edge won, they're like, "Yo, should he go after the Raw belt or Universal or that?" And I was like, "Yo, what would be fire, but it won't happen if he went after Finn and the NXT title."
Dude, he came down there, he cut a promo, and I was actually with it.
Yeah, right. And then, dude, and I'm telling you this right when the Rumble ended. And then, like, it was either that week or the next week he's at NXT. And I'm like, yo, I remember Ernie called me, and Ernie never calls me. He always just texts me. Ernie calls me and he's like, dude, that shit would have been a banger. Like, yo, you might be onto something. Because think about this. Think about the credibility that brings to NXT, that your Royal Rumble winner wants to go after that title.
I mean, they tried it last year with Charlotte, but it was a different vibe. That would have been huge with Edge. And I was with it because Edge, I'm like, yo, that's fresh for Edge. He probably, like, when he cut that promo, like, NXT's what made me want to come back, and I wanted to work with you guys. And he had that little segment with Karrion Kross too. I'm like, yo, there's something here, man. But then I was like, I know the main event's Roman, and that's where Edge is gonna go, and that kind of sucks. To your point, though, when it comes to Finn, though, I will say this: prior to Edge announcing that he was gonna be in the Rumble, I forgot Finn had a title match. I was like, what if Finn lost the belt, won the Rumble, and then came after Roman? Like, that would have been a great way to bring him back.
Yeah, that would have been.
Because I'm like, you need a way to bring him back to the main roster. You need a way to bring him back there because he eventually needs to come back there. I don't want, if Finn's going to be an NXT, now that I feel like NXT is back to being this third brand, not a third brand, but the development brand, Finn can't overstay his welcome there. Eventually, he's going to have to go back up, and they got to do it in a way that actually fucking matters. Yeah. How are we going to do that?
Yeah, because you don't even have Gallows and Anderson there anymore to, do a Bullet Club thing.
I mean, it's like, how do you make it matter? And WWE is a whole, like, it's just a whole, like, I know they eventually are going to want to call up Karrion and Scarlett. I know they're going to want to, now that the Undisputed Era is broken up, are they going to call one or two of them up separately after this feud? Is Adam Cole going to show up? Is Kyle O'Reilly going to show up in the main roster? Like, there's so much to speculate, but all of it ends up just hurting NXT.
Yeah. Yeah, man. But, I don't want to discourage the big weekend that's coming up in 2 weeks for the whole Mania stuff, because it's going to be a banger, man. They're going to deliver. I think there's going to be some memorable matches.
Oh, anytime the build-up's been bad and the put into a corner, WWE finds a way to deliver. That's like the WrestleMania 31 had the worst build-up in the most recent years of WrestleManias. And then we had the heist of the century and one of the coolest RKO ever, and just like a solid show from top to bottom.
Yeah, literally. It was just, so you're right. When they under-deliver leading up to something, they always come back over the top.
Anytime I've gone into a show with low expectations, and that's probably why, because I go into low expectations, always exceeds my expectations. People were talking so much shit about Great Balls of Fire because of the name and everything. That ended up being a great show.
Yeah. Dude, under-promise, over-deliver is how I live my life.
Like, there you go. You're leaving me with very little time, but I'm going to make a bunch of comments about AEW really quickly. It is Faction-Mania over there. It is QT Marshall broke up with Cody Rhodes' Nightmare Factory and started his own faction with half of the Nightmare Factory tonight, which was just like mind-boggling to me because, like, who cares about QT Marshall? And then almost every segment, if you watch Dynamite this week, guys, almost every segment featured a faction. And listen, I'm not against it, but I am saying some factions do not need to exist, like QT Marshall's faction. All of that is just, it's ridiculous. And we've seen factions split and come back together. Like, we literally just saw Eddie Kingston's old faction merge with Matt Hardy's faction. Like, it's Faction-Mania over there, and it's ridiculous. But then sometimes this faction stuff works. For example, the Inner Circle against the Pinnacle tonight. Nick, if you did not watch Dynamite, I put it in my story, watch a segment between the Inner Circle and the Pinnacle. That shit is great. I want blood and guts. I want a war games between these two teams. They paired everybody off nicely. It was Guevara with Sean Spears. It was FTR against Santana and Ortiz. It was Jericho and MJF. It was Wardlow and Jake Hager. It's all paired off perfectly. They're both two strong factions. The Inner Circle's a babyface now. And it was a great segment. Like, I enjoyed it. Then I was making jokes about, you know, the Lucha guys, Pentagon Phoenix and Laredo Kid. I'm like, basically all their matches should be under Lucha rules because nobody fucking follows the rules in their matches anyways, and that would be a cool gimmick. Had a hell of a match against Kenny Omega in the club, Gallows and Anderson. And then what happened? John Moxley came out. Eddie Kingston's injured. Who's with John Moxley now? The Young Bucks. Factions, guys. Everybody's in teams. Everybody's got allegiances. But that's another one that was proper. Like, it worked out perfectly fine. The end of the show, we had a match between the women where the Dark Order were with Tay Conti guys, and then Matt Hardy was out there with these other people, and that didn't work at all because why is Matt Hardy have a faction with a bunch of random people? I don't dig it. That's a scene where it didn't work. But then another scene where it did work was the main event, where we had the best friends in Orange Cassidy all reunite with Chris Statlander making her return, with Sue showing up, bringing Trent Beretta back after his injury, and they got back together and they beat Kip Sabian and Miro in this arcade melee match or whatever the hell it was, Arcade Anarchy, like, and it was a fun match. It was a solid fun match. And I know there's people out there saying like, well, after they gave us Britt Baker and Thunder Rosa a couple of weeks ago, this is a joke. It was still entertaining. If I can say anything about tonight's Dynamite, because we're recording this on Wednesday night today, is that I was sports entertained through and through from start to finish. And Nick, the fact that you haven't watched Dynamite, I understand, because it was really bad for a while. I complained about there being a very big lack of logic and things not making sense and storylines just dragging on forever. But ever since the last pay-per-view Revolution, every Dynamite has been good. So if there was a time to get back into watching Dynamite, it's now. And also the fact that NXT is moving to Tuesdays on April 14th, and now Dynamite's on Wednesdays, and they don't have to go head-to-head against each other, trying to compare each other's shows. They're both going to have more freedoms to hopefully put on just the shows they want to put on. It could potentially get even more better. But I will give you a heads up. It's fucking Faction-Mania on Dynamite. Everybody's a part of a group, and everybody's got friends, and everybody's a part of a crew. And I don't know why. Some of it's really good, and some of it is just like, why?
Yeah, it seems like, you know, they've had some moments that has gotten me to tune in to like specific matches.
Mm-hmm.
Like when everyone was talking about Britt Baker a couple of weeks ago, like I went and watched it. I was like, yo, this is some gangster shit that's going on right now. And also like Tay Conti, I'm a fan of for many reasons.
Yeah.
But I also liked her when like she had something, because I'm a fan that she's a black belt in a martial arts, and like that translates in the ring. So like there is an aura of badass with her.
Yeah.
And I think that there is a lot of potential for her. I mean, and I would like them to work a little bit more on the women's division.
That's the only, I thought for a while, there's a lot of flaws, to be honest. I'm not going to sit here and act like AEW's been perfect or is perfect now. I'm not going to lie through my teeth, but the women's division will always somewhat be flawed because they have the fact that, and this is going to sound redundant because I said it a bunch of times that show after it happened, but the fact that Britt Baker and Thunder Rosa wasn't the title feud, and they did that, and the belt's on Shida, who I forget is champion 90% of the time, tells you there's a problem with that women's division. They'd have women that they can use now. They have Tay Conti, they have Anna Jay, they have Britt Baker, they have Thunder Rosa, have Serena Deeb working there. They got Chris Statlander back. Penelope, even if she might not be the most crisp wrestler, has an appeal to her as well. Like, they have a solid amount of women. Nyla Rose is good. It's just that anytime they push Nyla Rose, they bury her against someone that shouldn't be burying her. Yeah, they sold me on Riho. You got Jade Cargill that looks like a star. You bought this Red Velvet. Like, they have a solid women's division. It's just how are we going to book them now? Because they booked them very poorly. Other than that, there's factions everywhere. And I don't know where the mid card is. There's a ton of mid card talent, but like there really isn't like a mid card. And then the top of the card is also very slim too. It has its flaws, but it's been good since Revolution. It's been an entertaining show. That's all I'm saying. And if you were going to tune back into it, like, it's on Wednesdays. I don't know what you do on Wednesdays, but if you have 2 hours to spare, and let me tell you something about Dynamite. This is a little secret, because like unless you have PVR, DVR, and you record and watch it after, 99% of the time, if you go onto YouTube the very next day and you say AEW Dynamite full, the full episode's on YouTube.
That'll definitely help me, because while I'm at work and I'm setting up the grill, it needs some time to kill. So
Yeah.
Might have to dive into that.
And that's a little gem for those that don't know. AEW will take down your content if you talk shit about their company. They will rip their content off your Instagram pages and YouTube. But you can upload the full episode the day after and it'll stay up there for like a week because, that's okay.
I feel like this is a personal issue here.
Oh, it's not a personal issue. It was for me, but I have a great relationship with them now, and I understand how I'm supposed to post for them, and I have no beef. I know it never was with AEW that was getting me in trouble. It was with TNT, but I know there's people on YouTube that have been saying like it's fucked because like they'll let people post their content when they're talking about and reviewing the show, but if you talk negatively about AEW, then they take it down. Then it's an issue. But yeah, people can post full episodes of the show, and it won't be taken down for like weeks. Which I'm like, yo, that is a contradiction. In a way. Other than that, let the people know where to find you, Nick, and what you're up to.
At the Lamb Show is where you can find me. Justin, you're the man. Thank you for having me. I like these, like, sorry if I changed up your flow or what you had planned to talk about.
No, you did not change the flow up at all. We talked about everything that needed to be talked about. I just wanted to make sure I snuck in AEW because I know you didn't watch it, and I was like, I know this guy's pulling out all the WWE stuff, but let me just get some AEW in here. Let me show them some love. But yeah.
So it's at the Lamb Show, so you can find all my personal stuff, and then at Veterans Minimum is where you can find the podcast. It's a little sports, it's a little betting. It's I got some wrestling stuff coming up. My buddy actually does the theme songs for WWE, so he's gonna come on sometime soon. So yeah, man, it's a lot of cool shit, man, and I appreciate you.
No, for sure. And that's what reminded me of something I'll ask you after we end this. But other than that, like you guys know about me, check out the Patreon, guys. That's like the biggest thing right now. Check out the Wrestling Classic Patreon. Go subscribe. The lowest tier is $2. Honestly, all the support helps. It's really more for allowing me to continue to create content and kind of do this more as a full-time gig. All the support helps because if you guys can support the Patreon, the more content I can put out there, the more shows I can put out there, the more videos I can put out there, the more I can post on Instagram, the more of everything you get. Other than that, like you guys know, my articles at 1:37 p.m. I try to drop 2-3 a month. We have one coming up about mic slips. We have another one coming up about me ranking all the matches of the Undertaker's streak. So check that out. And then other than the TWC show, like I do the casual conversations whenever I can get interviews. Most recently just had Joe Santagato on. Talked to him, chopped up about his time working with The Rock and, his fandom of being a wrestling fan, everything else he's doing. And I got a couple of big ones coming up soon, but I don't like to talk about them until they actually happen. Because if you've ever tried to schedule interviews, guys, things don't always go as planned. People bail out last minute. They say they're down and then they disappear. So when they're like recorded and stored and ready to go, I'll tell you guys about them. But other than that, like everyone keep doing the thing. Make sure you guys go follow Nick on Instagram at The Lamb Show. And yeah, man, I think that's about it. Last question for you, Nick. On a scale of 1 to 10, how excited are you for WrestleMania this year so far at this very particular moment?
A 6.
All right. I feel like I'm around the same place, but they got one more week to sell me. They got some go-home shows. Also, guys, the Hall of Fame, guys, is going to be out next week as well. And I think they're filming in 2 parts because they already filmed the 2020 part of the Hall of Fame. I wanted to quickly touch on that. The pictures are out there. People are leaking pictures left, right, and center, whether it's Georgia, the Bella Twins, or whatnot. But they did the 2020 class alone, and they're going to do the 2021 class alone. And just so you guys know, I thought I'd give you that information if you didn't know already. Other than that, guys, keep doing the thing. We'll see you all next time. Ooh, yeah, dig it. Uh-huh.